Have you ever stopped to think about who you are? I mean, really, how did you become the person you are today? These are some of the biggest questions we can ask. For literally centuries, philosophers and scientists have been trying to piece together the incredible puzzle of human development. So, let's dive into that story, because really, it's the story of you.
At the end of the day, it all boils down to this one huge question. Are you born or are you made? Is who you are pretty much written in your genes from day one, or is it shaped by everything that happens to you? This single question has been the engine behind our entire quest to understand ourselves, and it's the journey we're taking today.
You know, to really appreciate how far we've come, you gotta look at where we started. The conversation used to be, well, let's just say it was a lot less complicated. We went from a pretty firm belief that children were just born sinful and needed to be broken, to a modern view that sees development as this incredibly complex dance. So how on earth did we make that jump?
Our story actually kicks off not in a lab, but in the minds of some really bold philosophers. They were the first ones to start questioning centuries of belief about what it even meant to be a child.
It's kind of wild to think about now, but back in the 16th century, the common view was that kids were basically just tiny, evil adults. They were seen as being born full of sin, and the goal of parenting wasn't about nurturing them. It was about taming them, usually with some pretty harsh, restrictive methods. But then, along comes the 17th century philosopher John Locke with an idea that was, honestly, completely revolutionary. He looked at this whole born sinful thing and basically said, nope, that's all wrong. He argued that children aren't born good or evil, they're born as a blank slate.
Locke had a fancy Latin name for this idea, tabula rasa, which just means blank tablet. And this was a huge deal, right? Because if a child is a blank slate, then everything they become is written on them by their experiences. This was a massive shift. It put all the responsibility for how a kid turns out squarely on their environment and their upbringing.
But, of course, not everyone was sold on Locke's idea. About a century later, another philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, stepped into the ring with a totally different take. He said children aren't blank slates at all. In fact, he called them noble savages.
Rousseau's big idea was something he called innate goodness. He believed that children are born with a built-in moral compass, a natural plan for growing up healthy and good. For Rousseau, the real danger wasn't that kids were blank, it was that meddling adults in society could actually corrupt that natural inherent goodness. And there you have it, the first big showdown in our story. On one side, you've got John Locke's blank slate, where nurture is the whole game. And on the other, Rousseau's noble savage, where nature gives you the blueprint. This clash of ideas really set the stage for everything that was to come. Now, these philosophical debates were fascinating, for sure, but the next giant leap forward happened when we moved from just arguing about kids to actually, watching them. Science was officially entering the nursery.
And a huge player in this shift was, believe it or not, Charles Darwin. Yeah, the evolution guy. He was also one of the first people to study child development scientifically. He kept these incredibly detailed journals about his own kids, which he called baby biographies. This was a game changer. For the first time, someone was systematically observing and recording developmental milestones, seeing the patterns.
After Darwin, the whole field just took off. You had guys like G. Stanley Hall, who's often called the father of developmental psychology. He started using questionnaires to gather data on tons of kids to figure out what was average for different ages, creating those developmental norms we still use today. At the same time, another pioneer was using science to solve a very real-world problem.
And that pioneer was Alfred Binet. He wanted to find a way to identify children who were really struggling in school so they could get extra help. And to do that, he created the very first successful intelligence test. Binet's work was a massive turning point. It showed that this new science could be used not just to describe kids, but to actually intervene and improve their lives. And all this science, all this data, it all led to probably the biggest, most mind-blowing shift of all. The focus had always been on childhood, but researchers started to realize something profound. Development doesn't just stop when you turn 18. We never, ever stop changing. And this is what we now call the lifespan perspective. It's the bedrock of how we understand development today. Basically, it just says that growing and changing is a lifelong gig, from the moment you're conceived to your very last day. It's not one thing, it's a super complex mix of our bodies, our culture, and the choices we make. A great way to picture this is with these three overlapping circles.
You've got your biological processes. That's your body, your health, your genes. Then your cognitive processes, how you think, your intelligence, your language. And finally, your socio-emotional processes, your relationships, your personality, your feelings. The key thing is these aren't separate lanes. They're all tangled up, constantly shaping and reshaping each other throughout your entire life.
This table here breaks it down so well. Take multidirectional. It just means development isn't always about getting better. Some things improve while others might decline. It's way harder to learn a new language as an adult, but you're probably way wiser than you were at 10. And this one, plasticity, this is so important. It means we have the capacity to change. You're not stuck. Your experiences can literally reshape your brain at any age. How cool is that?
But here's the thing. Just because we have this amazing new way of looking at development doesn't mean we've got it all figured out. Not even close. In fact, it's just led us to better, smarter questions, which have turned into 3 great debates that are still pushing the science forward.
First up, the all-time classic nature versus nurture. This is basically the 2.0 version of that old Locke versus Rousseau argument, but today we know it's not either or, it's always both. The real puzzle scientists are trying to solve now is figuring out exactly how our genes and our environment dance together to create, well, you.
All right, debate number 2 is all about the shape of change. Is development a smooth, gradual process, like walking up a ramp, where you just slowly get a little better at things? That's the continuous view. Or is it more like climbing a set of stairs, where you make these sudden leaps into whole new ways of thinking and being? That's the discontinuous view.
And finally, we have stability versus change. Are you, at your core, the same person you were when you were 7? Are key parts of your personality just locked in early on? Or can you fundamentally change who you are later in life based on your experiences? This one really gets to the heart of our potential for growth.
Okay, so we've bounced from old school philosophy to modern science. What's the bottom line? Why does any of this matter to you, right here, right now?
It matters because development isn't something that happened to you. It's not in your rearview mirror. It's an active, dynamic process that you are part of right now. This lifespan perspective empowers you to see your own life, not as a finished product, but as a story you are still actively writing every single day. Which leaves us with one final, and I think really exciting question. The science shows us that we have this incredible capacity for change, this plasticity at every stage of life. So, knowing that you are always a work in progress, the only real question left is, who will you decide to become next?